Now is the winter of our discontent. Make me a willow coat.
The abuse of greatness
And porridge
destroy
you a
genius.
comedian. Make music be the food of love. Cry out, lay on. Be crowned, son of York.
All right, we are
All right,
recording.
we're recording. Exciting.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shakespeare's, the show where I, your host, Daniel Watterson, actor and now first-time interviewer, talk to my peers about Shakespeare. It's a working title.
I like
Thank you, Sheena. Now, our first guest is Sheena Irving. I've written a little intro for you, Sheena, so I'm gonna say this, and then we get to see your beautiful face. Recently come off her third stint at the Pop-Up Globe, having tackled some of Shakespeare's greatest characters. We're talking Brutus, Olivia, Titania, hailing from the UK, but truly a talent of international caliber with a theatre CV that is truly diverse. Getting to the human, Sheena is a deep thinker, a sensitive, brave, committed and daring actor, and a deeply mindful and caring human. So when my wife said to me, I told her this idea of what I wanted to do, interview some people about Shakespeare, and she said, who would you interview first? And I said, without hesitation, Sheena. Welcome, Sheena.
Oh, it was worth it just for that, Dan.
Well, there you go. Not everyone's going to get that treatment, just you.
I'm going to record that and just listen to that every night as I fall asleep.
You can, or you just put, I mean, I've got nothing else to do if you just want to call me.
I'll call you. You
Yeah.
can just run me through it.
How is COVID? So we're in New Zealand right now and we're in our second week of lockdown. So
Yeah.
how have you been going?
I feel like this picture that you're getting right now is a really good kind of COVID picture, i.e. someone sort of doing a worky type thing, but from their bed.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time, isn't it?
Yeah, my flatmates didn't leave their bedroom yesterday, and I only leave my bedroom to go to the kitchen. In this case, we've set up a little studio upstairs, and as I said to Sheena just offline, I'm still wearing the same trackies that I've been wearing all week. But otherwise, we're good.
It's a time for leisure wear. Yeah, no, we're good. I've got 2 children in the house, so that kind of keeps things fresh and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't spend too much time in bed, but
Or
yeah,
humouring people with their strange interviews.
this is great. This is like taking a little holiday. But yeah, strange time. So I guess a weird time of a loss of kind of autonomy in certain parts of our lives, and then working out how we find it in other places so that we can not completely unravel.
And as actors, we, in some ways, we're kind of used to giving up some autonomy. What do you think about that?
Yes, I've been thinking about this a lot, partly because in the other strand of my life, I'm a counsellor and have been doing some work around mental wellness in our industry. So I have thought about that a lot, and I mean, there's a few different prongs to it. One, in that our industry's been sort of decimated at the moment, so that has a huge impact financially and emotionally and spiritually for people. There is another element though where creatives are pretty used to hustling, riding the waves, and not having a lot of security around finances or what's coming. So in some senses we're quite well resourced to deal with a time like this, though the sort of decimation to the industry kind of maybe negates that or adds a different layer of challenge.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of actors, and there's been some open talk about this, about the pressure we put on ourselves and how that's changed in this time. Now we're at home, and now that we can't use the traditional model of agent gets us an audition, or through our contacts we hear about an audition, we audition and get a role that someone else is producing. All of a sudden, there are no productions except for what we make.
Yeah,
and some people feel that pressure to
well, there's sort of a range of different responses, I think.
Mm,
I've seen some people go into a really kind of fervent time of producing. It's been sort of fascinating watching some people come up with a huge amount of content, or just a real presence, and then other people sort of retreat to a really different place of reflection, or just needing to really be and collect and kind
mm,
of maybe witness. um, and there's sort of this whole spectrum, and I think probably all of those responses are right,
mm.
um, because we're all so different and have different contexts and different demands. And most of mine are just keeping two kids sort of in a place of feeling safe and balanced, and not letting them kill each other or me kill them, or
Yeah,
keeping two kids alive is taking up a lot of my creative energy.
yeah,
So yeah, like, interesting. Everyone, I think, maybe just knowing that you've got license to respond in the way that you feel you need to, and that
mm,
there's no comparison always being the thief of joy. It'd be really easy to sit and think, I'm not coming up with anything, I'm not creating anything, but I think that's okay. It's like, well, you'll be processing this, and that might lead to a different, richer creation further down the line. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that is
There's a lot
beautifully
of power.
said, Sheena. It sort of a little bit of a segue, because I would love, one of the things we've talked about is another interview or another series where we can talk about these things more.
Hmm.
And I'm conscious that Zoom only allows us 40 minutes, and
This
there's
is
lots
it.
that I want to get to. Um,
Yeah.
but since we're on the subject, I wanted to read you a quote. Now, this is from um, a documentary that was made by an actor about mental health in our industry. It's called The
Hmm.
Show Must Go On, and this is him interviewing Sam Neill. And Sam, who many of you be familiar with, a very well-known New Zealand actor, and he says, if you identify as an actor and you're currently not acting, what are you? Most of us are between jobs, and what are you between jobs? It's possible in those times to think of yourself as kind of no one. And the way out of that is to separate yourself from your profession. That's what I do. That's not what I am. I do acting, but I'm not an actor. I don't think of myself as an actor, actually. Um, and when I heard him say those words, I felt this release off my shoulders of this pressure that I'd put
Yeah.
on myself.
Yeah. That really resonates, doesn't it? And
Mm,
it's quite kind of liberating. I, Identity is so tied up in our wellness, I guess, um, and within this industry, I think maybe particularly. And I've definitely had a battle with that throughout my career, because you can spend swathes of time without work, and I've definitely felt that
mm,
that I'm not an actor anymore because I'm not working.
me too.
um yeah, feeling embarrassed to write that down as my job, because I'm like, I'm just a fraud, everyone's going to find out. Yeah,
Or
so I
people
think
don't
there is.
like you anymore, or I'm not as good as I was last year because last year I was doing all those shows and now I'm not.
Yeah, totally. So if your self-esteem and your personal worth is kind of tied up in how strong your identity as actor is, and that is contingent on whether you're working or not, then that's a real place of kind of powerlessness, like, because that depends on other people giving you work all the time. So but I guess part of our journey as artists is to find I think there's a lot of work that we kind of do around our identity, like the Venn diagram of all the different facets that make us up.
Mm,
And sure, act is part of that, but it doesn't define who you are.
yeah.
I mean, I in some ways I feel like it does, because it's like when I'm not creating, I feel parts of me atrophy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there is, but that's just about creating, and like you can find ways to create in, so like that, maybe this has been a really good time for that, people finding ways to be creative in their everyday life. um
that
So
aren't
it's not
product or
yeah,
output focus.
yeah. And there's something sort of quite meditative about that as well. So it's not about having a job to go to or a play to do, but finding the creativity within ourselves that, you know, help us maintain that sense of who we are as creative, as artists. Mm.
Gosh, this is
But
why
yeah,
I love you, Sheena. I feel like so much of me wants to keep talking about this area, and maybe we can come back to it as well. Is there for people who do, after listening to this, want to pursue these threads, are there any websites or people that they can talk to or resources?
a whole ton, but none that I've got off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, we'll put
So
some, if
yeah,
we publish this, we'll put some
cool.
links. I'll put a link to that video, the documentary, The Show Must Go On. I'm sure Equity has some resources, and you
Yeah,
yourself provide these services as well. Is that right?
yeah. I'm a counsellor, so I've been doing a bit of work with drama students just recently, and working in a high school as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
wonderful. So I want to
yeah.
know a little bit more about Sheena the actor. You've been acting since forever.
I have really since I sort of I guess acting and performing and dancing since I was a kid, but professionally acting. Oh, I left drama school in 2000, so
Mhm.
that's 20 years ago.
I know it goes quickly, doesn't it?
Wow, I'm old.
Um,
Yeah.
when was there a moment when it sort of was there a moment for you when you were like, this is what I want to do, or is it more that that was never the question because you were always doing it?
Um. Okay. So yeah, I went to dance lessons from about I don't know 4 or 5, and just loved it. And then we did shows, and I loved being on stage.
Mm,
And I think that's probably a lot of actors have that sense of being or a need to be seen.
mhm.
So I think that was always there. And then I can remember the moment I did a play called Queen Beryl and the Romans when I was at primary school. I would have been about maybe not 8, 9, something like that. Um, and I played Queen Beryl, and I just loved it so much. Um,
It's
and
funny, Sheena. It was a primary school play for me when I was about 9, and I was also playing a Roman, not
yeah,
Queen Beryl. I was some kind of centurion.
Beryl being the Brit, she was almost like a kind of she looked a bit like Boadicea or something.
Mhm.
But it was the Romans invading. So yeah, so I had like a animal skin costume that my mum had made. I remember it so vividly. I can remember everyone in the cast. I can remember the songs. Yeah, so it's
Wow,
sort of indelibly printed on my brain.
wow.
And there was an agent in the audience one night who talked to my mum and said, I think that you should send her to drama classes. I think that there's something there. So yeah, that feels like kind of the moment when I was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. And speaking of, you're talking about animal skins, you've also played the representation of evil as the great serpent dancing with, maybe isn't the right word, but sharing the same rarefied air as none other than James Bond. Is that right?
Roger Moore, yeah, one of the James Bonds, yeah. Yeah, that was I would have been about 16 when I did that. There was a show at the Albert Hall, which was just bonkers. It was like a big kind of charity show. So just all these incredible actors like
You
Paul
realize
Scofield.
that makes you practically a Bond villain. You were an evil person on stage with James Bond.
Yeah, you're right.
So you've played a Bond villain. So Shakespeare for you is piece of cake after that.
No, I've never really framed it like that. Thanks, Daniel. The broccolis
We're
might
going
have.
to play a little game, Sheena.
Okay.
Okay. Now, bear with me as I get the tech ready.
Okay. This is
Okay.
exciting, Daniel.
What I need to do is share my screen with you. Share screen. Here go.
Ooh.
Oh, hang on.
Oh.
Don't peek.
Okay, I'm not peeking.
Present. Okay. What can you see?
What's going on?
What's going on?
What's going
Right.
on?
Sheena,
Yes,
what's,
Daniel.
what's going on?
What's going on? That's me playing Moonshine in A Midsummer Night's Dream with Peter Hambleton and Jono and well, that's us in Perth.
Moonshine. What is she? Some kind of
Moonshine.
fairy or something?
Yes. What Moonshine's one of the rude mechanicals in it.
Gosh, so you've gone from playing an evil spirit to a fairy.
Yeah. Did play a
Right, okay.
fairy. Yeah.
Going to see a
That
bit
was
of a
really
theme here. All right. Sheena, what's going
Yes,
on?
ma'am. Oh, that's Close City. You were in that.
Was I?
That's
What's going on here?
going on. That's me going through some kind of sexual revolution from downtrodden spouse, domestic spouse to sex worker.
Yeah. There's
Oh, that
a,
was
tell us about your face there. There's a real mixture of sort of things going on.
there's part terror, part joy. I don't know what's going on, Dan. Oh, that play. I love doing that play.
A friend of
What a
ours
great
commented
play.
on this photo. This is what happens when you let your daughters on the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this play,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about this play.
It was pretty dark, wasn't it? Where did we go from Malmo to? Help me out.
From Malmo to, don't remember. Gosh,
Yeah.
the bridge between Malmo and Copenhagen, perhaps.
Copenhagen. See, this is what happens, and this was my worry about the interview. I'm so myopic when it comes to acting. When I have a play, I am so in it.
Yeah.
It's my entire world, and I research it, and I work, and I soak all this stuff up. And then the minute that it's finished, it's like my brain's been wiped. Can't remember anything.
Room for more.
Can't the lines, can't remember.
Well, in some ways,
any.
that's supposed to be I should have done my research more, and I should be prompting you better. But so this is Close City, a Lithuanian absurdist play that we did. There was a time, wasn't there, Sheena, where you and I seemed to only ever work together.
Yeah, we did a whole bunch of plays back to back, didn't we?
And then when we stopped working together, we started playing the same roles at different times.
I just chased your roles after that, didn't I?
We'll get to that.
Oh, that's
what's going on?
What's going on? I've undergone a pretty horrific experience on that table.
Who's this green fish in the corner?
That is Lucy Sutter, who award-winning in this play. She played the mermaid. Didn't speak a line of dialogue, but broke everyone's heart. She's so good. That's you on the floor, isn't it?
That's me on the floor, writhing in jam, I think.
And ecstasy. And there's Emma.
Emma over here.
Yeah.
The real villain of the piece.
Yeah, she was amazing in this, eh?
Up here is Thomas Sainsbury.
Thomas Sainsbury bringing the absurd.
It's Instagram guy.
Yeah.
And then down in the corner, we have Jeff Schusterman pointing a gun at the audience.
He was disturbing. So great in that role. So dark, eh?
Yeah. Sheena, what's going on here?
Oh, okay. This takes. So I feel like I have two. There's this life that I've almost forgotten existed, but this was me in my London acting life. So that's a play that I did at the National Theatre. So there's Bertie Carvel at the front there, who was the original Mrs. Trunchbull in Matilda.
Was he?
Yeah, and he's done lots of TV drama. He's really
excellent role.
And then there's Tom Hardy. That is.
It's Tom Hardy.
Yeah. He played Dormant. We were doing Man of Mode.
Tell me about this.
That's me.
Endearing.
Yeah, I look like I'm praying there.
Yeah.
Staring at Tom's butt.
Staring at his elbow.
Yeah, that was a really happy time. This was a fun time. So like when you're an actor in London, there's a few places you kind of dream of working, or I did anyway. One of them was the RSC, which I never made, because at the time I was Shakespeare-phobic. So we'll maybe come back to that. I had one Shakespeare audition in my life and I just didn't learn a speech. I was so terrified. And I turned up and they were like, have you got a speech? And I went, no. I know.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Wow.
And then the other place was the National. So this was about maybe 7 years into my having left drama school.
Mm-hmm.
I'd done a tour of another play for Birmingham Rep, and then the director of that was assisting Marianne Elliott on a show. So they called me in for an audition, and I didn't get that role. But then the casting director, Alistair, called me back to audition for Nick Heitner, who directed Man of Mode. And so I got to work with some great people. Rory Kinnear played Sir Fopling Flutty. Actually, he won an Olivier for that. He was amazing.
So, I mean, I really didn't overstate your intro at all. And you've really been in some rarefied air, and you are, Sheena, an exceptional performer. I'm trying to share something else with you, but it's saying sharing is paused. Bring your shared video to the front.
Daniel Watterson
Can you
has.
that?
That's us again. Yeah,
that's us again. What's going on here?
What's going on here? Oh, well, here I'm leading a drug trial, Daniel, which you're going to be part of because you're in this play with me.
In what way, specifically? What's that in your hand?
Oh, is that a pea pot, Daniel?
The pea pot.
The pea pot.
This is the closeness that Sheena and I share. I peed in that pot.
I really loved this play so much.
Yeah.
The company. So that was me, Jessie Lawrence, Will Wallace, and Daniel in The Effect, directed by Benjamin Henson.
Written by Lucy Preble.
And written by Lucy Preble. Yeah,
to tie back into what we were talking about a little bit before, this is a play about depression, and about whether or not depression is the natural state of the human mind, and is necessary to just be part of the context and the canvas of our lives to maybe tell us that something needs changing, or versus whether it should be medicated and squashed out. It's also a play about love. Mm-hmm. And on this drug trial, these two participants fall in love, but they do so whilst they're on these drugs. And so they begin to doubt or question whether what they're feeling is genuine or whether it's the result of a stimulus. And then you get to the next level of thinking of saying, well, if love is simply the consequence of a chemical release anyway in the brain, does it matter?
Yep.
And those lofty questions often rode on your shoulders as the doctor administering the trial in this show.
Yeah, this was from a purely I was going to say ego place, as in as an actor, sometimes you just how do I explain this? The journey that I got to go on with that character was, I just loved it so much. The concept of being in flow. Yes. I can't remember who coined that phrase, but I think about this a lot, and I think I'm someone who's got quite a fast-moving, quite noisy, reasonably anxiety-ridden brain. People don't often.
So a completely normal actor, then.
Yes. Yes. I and maybe one of the things I love so much about acting is that it's one of the few times where none of that happens. So when I'm on stage, then it's not like it the whole time, but there are these moments of absolute purity. That's what it feels like when you kind of come together as character, actor, this just beautiful moment where everything is in place and attention is focused and you're in flow. And there was something about that role and the journey that I got to go on, because the character takes a real sort of descent in terms of her mental health, to the point of really unraveling. And I just loved performing it so much. Yeah, I don't know that I can articulate it any better than that.
I think
But
you've articulated it really, really well. And what you were saying before reminds me of, I think Larry Moss in his book talks about those moments when those things come together, and it's an almost spiritual experience,
yeah,
not just for the
yeah,
performer, but for the audience as well.
yeah,
And I have ideas about what theatre, at its core function, does have a societal purpose to teach us, to move us, to grow us, to challenge us. And it's not just about entertainment. And it's in those moments of theatre that feels justified. And I felt that both as a performer uh, and as an audience member. And it's times like that just your whole skin, there's like a chemical reaction in the room, and everyone's skin is electrified.
yeah,
And that particularly was a play that asked a whole lot of big questions. The characters were asking those questions, but
yeah.
despite asking those questions, they couldn't stop their own descent or ascent because of what was going on for them.
And isn't that an interesting thing, that we can have awareness, and we can kind of intellectually conceive of something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have control over
So
none of
everybody go
that.
read that play. Right, in our last 10 minutes, we haven't talked about Shakespeare at all, have we? He said this was called Shakespeare's. Oh gosh. Okay. God, I've got all these questions. We're not going to get to do them all. Okay. Got to be a quick fire round, Sheena. What do you like about Shakespeare?
The poetry, the imagery. Like I said, I was a complete Shakespeare-phobic, and actually only started performing Shakespeare when I moved to New Zealand and realized that I wasn't going to get work doing anything else. I know, I'm a fraud.
No,
So
you are not. Oh my goodness.
literally, an audition came up. Michael Hurst was directing Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was an open audition. And I'd moved over here, didn't have any reputation whatsoever. Like, everything I'd done before was completely meaningless. And I was just like, I'm going to have to do this, because I just won't. I'm not getting seen by anyone for anything. So I worked really, really hard. I'd done some Shakespeare at drama school, but it terrified me. So I
How long
worked
did
really
it
hard.
take for that fear to go away, or did it go away?
So I remember watching. I worked with Linda Cartwright. I watched all of those amazing videos, those old BBC videos from the 70s, playing Shakespeare. Watched all of those. Read a whole load of what's her name? Legendary voice coach, Cicely Berry.
Yeah.
Cicely Berry has also done a whole load of Shakespeare videos. So I worked really hard, and I got Cam Rhodes to come in and work a monologue with me. And
We'll hopefully
I
get
went.
him on the show later.
Yeah, he was amazing. And what all of those things taught me were to just take it right into my body. And I think I had been thinking of Shakespeare as such a cerebral thing.
Yes.
And actually what Cam and all those videos and all of the work I did with Linda did was take it right into my body, which is where I'm comfortable
Yes.
physically.
Yes.
And so, and so then Michael cast me, and I did that season with Alistair. Oh,
I know.
years
Gosh.
since we lost him. And Alistair played Oberon, Alistair Browning. And
Actually,
we
that's
just
also
had
the
the
show
best
where
time.
I first fell in
Oh,
love with a certain
Amber.
person. Yeah.
Yeah, Amber played Puck. Oh my God, it was such a beautiful summer, performing that play with those people and all the marvelous crew, and just the people in the company. A lot of them have become good friends, and it was
I want to come back to your point about physicalizing. So, if you had, if there are any young actors or high schoolers listening to this who are going through a similar emergence in their relationship with Shakespeare, of going, oh, it's all in my head, and you mentioned physicalizing. Are there any other top tips, or can you open up physicalizing a bit more for us and tell us what you mean?
Yeah, so I would go and look at Sis Berry's videos and go and look at playing Shakespeare, but it's I mean it as literally as you get up and you move. So when I'm learning lines of verse, and I'll jump onto to furniture, and oh, I'm trying to think of all the tips now. There are so many great exercises, but
We've got one
literally
where you move in one direction for each
yeah,
thought,
yeah, and then change
and
direction.
then change direction on a new thought.
Yeah,
I had one where if there's antithesis in what you're saying, and usually it's Shakespeare, there is antithesis,
yeah,
but what we mean two opposite ideas. As you're saying it, literally change, move one way and then move the other way on each antithesis, and that will punctuate for you. My character is saying this idea, and now he's saying the opposite idea, and you
yeah.
physically move your body. And we're not suggesting you this
Not
is what you do on
improving
stage, but you'll find,
performance.
yeah, that your body will recognize the change in thought
Yeah,
and will then
my
inform.
totally, and then that yes, then there'll be real clarity in the speech as you speak it, because it's so kind of underpinned. My top tips are actually really obvious. Know what you're saying. That was part of my problem with Shakespeare. I just didn't work hard enough. So now if I'm playing a role, and this takes time, especially if you're playing a role like Brutus where there's a shit ton of lines,
Yeah.
but go through every single word, know what you're saying, I work through the rhythm of every single line. I count it out. I work out whether it's a feminine ending, and I take a really technical approach to the text initially, um, and work through all of that, and then I get it right into my body, and it's much easier to learn because I don't find learning Shakespeare easy. It takes me ages. I have to write it out, but I find because it is such a rhythmic language, and because it is, it's a heartbeat.
You're talking about the I ams,
So it's
the
asking
ba-bum,
you
ba-bum.
about the IAMs, yeah. So it's asking you to use your body to learn it and to fully inhabit it. And the more work you can do with that physical stuff you're just talking about, and get that underneath, then it means you can then bring that beautiful stillness to it if you need to, but all of it's kind of underpinning the speech then.
I love both. I've written the same things down: physicalize, understand. On understand, I had a director in the first season of Pop Up Globe. He now teaches, or he did then as well, teach at Central School of Speech and Drama. And he would always say during rehearsal, he'd interrupt you and say, "What is your thought?"
Yeah.
And, you'd be mid, and you might have learned something by rote. Ba 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 ba. It must be by his death, and watch the rest of Brutus. It must be by his
I
death. You
can't
can help me
remember
with this one.
any of that. I can't remember.
Gosh, it should be physical, shouldn't it? And for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn at him. And, you could just be rattling these off because they're physical memory, like that was. But then halfway through, you'd say, "What's your thought?" Well, my thought is, I've been up all night thinking that how do I resolve this? And I finally come to the conclusion that the only way it must be by killing him. That's my thought, is I've got to kill my friend. It's like, great, okay, keep going. And then you'd keep talking, and then he'd say, "What's your thought?" And you'd have to stop. And so that's the thing you can do as well, as with each other. Just be that little voice that interrupts the other person's flow and goes, "What's your thought?"
Well, because and this is where Shakespeare is like any other text, and I think you can get a bit seduced by the language, and you can get seduced by the poetry, and it can become a bit of a recital. And you can always see that when someone's performing and they have just literally become seduced by the beauty of it. You still have to know what your motivation is for every single line. You still have to know what every thought is, and I think that's where that's where those moments of magic come from, where you're watching an actor on stage in Shakespeare and you feel like they're minting every single word as they're saying it.
By
and
minting, you mean like newly creating?
Newly created thoughts. And it's because they've beautifully married the technique and the rhythm and the verse, but they're also so present, and their motivation's really clear, and they're just in the moment with it, and yeah, then you get this sort of really transcendental experience of the beauty of the language, because that's one of the things that you can't, like, there were lines. I was listening to Hamlet on tour, and I don't know how many times I've read or heard that play and the speeches, and I had tears dripping down my face, like the whole way through the second act. So I was like, you can't, the beauty, like, words do that to me, poetry does that to me, but the absolute sheer beauty of it, the way that that language cuts through everything, and is such a direct route to your heart and to your soul. Yeah, that's what I love about
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
And I would say, as long as it's also coming from the performer's heart and soul,
Yeah,
which is why sometimes we can read the text and not know what's going on, but the actor's job is to be that conduit and to understand, as you were saying, because if you don't understand what you're saying, the audience doesn't know what you're saying. But
they're never going to
if you
understand.
understand, but also are living, as you said, that newly minted thought,
Yeah,
the words might be structured in an old-fashioned way, but they come from a place of truthfulness, of
yeah,
physicality, of emotion, of vocal connectedness to your thought and to your emotion, that it affects your audience and they know exactly what you're saying.
yeah. That's just reminded me of another time. So there are times where I've seen Shakespeare done by an actor who is connected in that way, and you forget that it's Shakespeare. It feels contemporary. I saw the Marley Theatre Company, the Russian theatre company, doing a production of The Cherry Orchard in London, like years ago when I was about 19 maybe, and it was all in Russian. And there were subtitles at the top, but I realized about halfway through that I wasn't reading them. I mean, like, I'd read The Cherry Orchard, so I had a good idea of what was going on, but I
Yeah,
wasn't reading subtitles, but I felt like I heard every word they said. Um,
for the first
just
time.
yeah, for the first time, because it was so embodied. And actually, I think that's probably the only way to see Chekhov is by a Russian theatre company. It doesn't make sense.
Oh, you
Yeah.
lucky thing. Hey,
Oh my God,
I
it was
am
amazing.
so conscious we are
Yeah.
out of time. I'm also conscious of people um, listening to this, that maybe we should keep these to sort of 30 or 40 minutes. There is so
Yeah.
much more I want to talk to you about.
We barely scratched the surface. Eh?
I'm not even a third of the way through what I wanted to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about Olivia. I want to talk to you about Brutus, and
Yeah.
I think we could do a whole
Oh,
video
Brutus.
on each of those characters. And I was read both those plays again yesterday, and I know them so well as well, and they still affected me so much.
Yeah. And I think for me, Brutus was a real unforgettable moment in my life. That role meant so much to me, and I've never felt like that on stage before. Yeah, that was a pretty magical role.
While we can, just before we go, I want to tease, because what I'd love to do is we could perhaps do another chat, and then people can listen to our talk about Brutus and Olivia. But what I'm just going to do is share my screen. There we
Yeah,
go.
I love how prepared you are, Daniel.
Is that working?
Oh yeah, there's Olivia, bless her.
So we will wrap it up here, but we're going to talk
Yeah.
about this lady, and we're also going to talk about, there you are again,
Oh yeah, with Jono
Jono
Malvolio.
Martin as Malvolio, who
God,
I'd
he's
love to
so
talk to
good.
Jono and probably Stanley Andrew Jackson about that character.
Yeah, Jono's Malvolio was one of my highlights of seeing an actor just in their absolute element. He was so good.
Yeah.
Um, oh,
And there's Brutus, and I just think
oh
this
yeah.
this is a remarkable picture.
Remarkable partly because there's Karen in the background who we lost just after that production. What a beautiful soul.
Yeah, that's right. And she'd only just sort of begun her theatre journey, hadn't she?
Yeah, she was sitting right in the middle of just living her dream in that. I've
Yeah.
never known someone so full of gratitude, and yeah, what a beautiful human. Um, Yeah.
On that sad note, we will wrap it up here. Thank you, Sheena, so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your thoughts, which are always so considered and informed, but also they come from such an authentic place. And that's why I think they always touch us. And that's true of your acting as well. I'd love to do a part
like
2, and we can talk about Olivia and Brutus. What's that?
Oh, it's nice. It's like being stroked gently in this time of not having anything.
Something about my mullet.
No, I like your mullet. I've got one growing too. But we're in this weird time where we're not allowed to touch each other. But actually, this has just felt like a big warm hug. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't really want to end it, but I'm going to, because attention spans and that sort of thing. Thanks for being my first guest, and I would love to. Let's tee up another one. Let's just do it.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel.
Great. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this sun